Ukrainian special services are preparing new special operations on the territory of Russia, and Operation Pautina to destroy Russian strategic bombers was just the beginning. Sources are now reporting this. And today, the Security Service of Ukraine showed a new spectacular video in which Tu-22 M3 bombers are being destroyed. This video was unpublished until today. In addition, many experts have already stated that replacing the bombers lost in Operation Pautina will take Russia years, if not decades. The occupiers are already having problems implementing military programs, and now there's also the issue of restoring strategic bombers. Concurrently, United States President Donald Trump referred to Zelensky as a bad guy following the execution of Operation Pautina. It made Trump angry, and the American president believes that Ukraine should obediently run to negotiations in Istanbul, where the Russians will bring these unacceptable ultimatums instead of carrying out these operations. But at the same time, there is Keith Kellogg on Trump's team who stated that such operations are a way to force peace, and they should be carried out more and more often. And I'll add that recently Ukraine once again carried out massive strikes on Russian territory. In particular, the airfields Engels in Saratov region and Dyagilevo in Ryazan region were successfully hit. And in addition, today there was some good news because a Su-35 was shot down in the Kursk region. This is a modern aircraft that Russians are proud of. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's look into this topic together. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, leave a like and write any comment you want. Also, subscribe to the Telegram channel Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There we publish breaking news as soon as it comes in. So, now let's go through everything step by step. Today, the Washington Post writes that while American President Donald Trump is moving further away from the role of peacemaker, Ukraine is more dependent than ever on its special services. The Washington Post writes about this. Sources from an intelligence publication report that Ukrainian special services are preparing additional complex operations targeting Moscow. It is noted that both sides want to break out of the deadlock war of attrition, and the Operation Pautina by the Security Service of Ukraine was a bold attempt to do so. During the full-scale war, the Security Service and the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine are bringing to life the slogans of Ukrainian special forces. Well, here the Washington Post doesn't quite understand the context, because they write that supposedly the slogan of the Ukrainian Special Forces is "I'm coming for you." But in fact, all Ukrainians know that it's actually "I'm coming for you." "I'm coming for you" is a famous saying that belongs to the Kievan Prince Sviatoslav the Brave. Well, in fact, it means a declaration of war, a threat, a challenge that "I'm coming for you, I'm coming to fight you, I'm coming for you" is really that very slogan. Well, and then what? The Washington Post compares the operations of the Security Service of Ukraine and Main Directorate of Intelligence to the operations of the United States Federal Security Service and the United States Central Intelligence Agency, between which there is serious rivalry. The publication notes that the Security Service of Ukraine was long accused of having many Russian agents, but successfully kept the operation against Russia's strategic aviation secret. According to intelligence sources, the head of the service, Vasily Malyuk, informed President Zelensky about the operation, but none of the other high-ranking members of his administration. That's very interesting. So, Malyuk trusts only Zelensky, not Yermak, not anyone else, only Zelensky. Moreover, even Malyuk's key deputy didn't know about this. As the publication quotes, "The front line inside Ukraine will remain a hell filled with drones and artillery, but covert operations can escalate into a so-called dirty war beyond the front lines, with more targeted killings, sabotage, and strikes against countries supplying weapons to Ukraine and Russia, respectively." So there's a hint that all of this will expand. Well, and here we are today. The Security Service of Ukraine reminded that during the special operation Pautina, strikes were carried out on 4 military airfields. There was actually a 5th one, but something didn't work out there yet. There were strikes there, but they haven't been publicly discussed yet. The Security Service of Ukraine released new footage from the special operation Pautina. It shows the full path of one of the first-person view drones from takeoff from the roof of a modular house to hitting a Russian strategic bomber Tu-22 M3 at the Beloi airfield. The video also shows how the drone covers a significant distance and easily enters the territory of the airfield, where smoke is already rising from previously hit aircraft. And as written by the Security Service of Ukraine, quote, "Let me remind you, the Security Service of Ukraine carried out such strikes on 4 Russian military airfields at once: Olenia, Ivanovo, Diagilevo, and Belaya. The aggressor state's strategic aviation, which regularly shells peaceful Ukrainian cities, was based there. This operation was directly led by the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, Vasyl Malyuk, on the orders of the President of Ukraine's Supreme Commander-in-Chief, Volodymyr Zelensky. They noted that the estimated value of the equipment destroyed as a result of the special operation exceeds $7 billion United States dollars. The total losses of enemy aviation amount to 41 units, among which are A-50 long-range radar detection aircraft Tu-95, Tu-22, Tu-160, as well as An-12 and Il-78. Today it is being reported that replacing the strategic bombers that were destroyed during Operation Pautina will take Russia years and will further delay its modernization program. 2 American officials told the agency that the United States of America estimated the losses of Russian aviation as follows: up to 20 military aircraft were damaged and about 10 more were destroyed. The Americans counted 30 aircraft in total, 10 completely destroyed and 20 damaged. Despite Russian officials assuring that they can repair everything and that tires and electronic warfare systems protected the planes, military correspondents report that in reality over 10 aircraft were destroyed and many seriously damaged. So, how are you planning to restore anything, the things that burn down to nothing? Well, analysts say that the destruction of these aircraft will not have a serious impact on Russia's nuclear strike capabilities, since those largely consist of land-based and submarine-launched missiles. At the same time, aviation experts here have pointed out one very important detail. They claim that Russia has used Tu-95 MS and Tu-22 Me-3 bombers, and not only for massive shelling of Ukraine, but also for patrolling in the Arctic, the North Atlantic, and the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, demonstrating their strength to the west. Now, it will be able to fly there, of course, because the planes, unfortunately, are still there, but not as often anymore. That is, in fact, with this strike, Ukraine was not only fighting for its own security, but also helping our Western partners. According to analysts, at the beginning of the full-scale war, Moscow had a fleet of 50 to 60 Tu-95 aircraft, about 60 Tu-22 M3S, and about 20 heavy Tu-160 meters bombers capable of carrying nuclear weapons. According to estimates, the Russians have already lost more than 10% of their combined fleet of Tu-98 yards S and Tu-22 M3 aircraft. Again, that's MS, and here 72 feet-3. These losses will put significant pressure on key Russian forces which were already operating at maximum capacity. In addition, the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London noted that the bombers developed during the Soviet era have been modernized, but their production no longer exists. In addition, microprocessors, which are critically important for avionics systems, are under sanctions, although the Russian side is modernizing its fleet of Tu-160 bombers. The production of new aircraft is proceeding very slowly. Moreover, at most only 1 unit is produced per year. Meanwhile, the initial production of the prospective long-range aviation complex may only begin next year, so is this just the beginning of the journey? Well, that's it. Based on this, experts say that it will now be much more difficult for Russia to implement the program for the prospective long-range aviation complex in the next 5 years. Not to mention speeding it up due to the budget deficit and material and technical limitations in industry caused by sanctions. Plus, let's add here all those strategic bombers that were destroyed as a result of the attack during Operation Web. But while aviation experts say that this was a brilliant operation, it helped not only Ukraine but also the West as a whole. American President Donald Trump believes that Ukraine should simply obediently run to negotiations in Istanbul, where the Russians will bring their unacceptable ultimatums instead of striking Russia. According to a publication today, Trump views Zelensky in a negative light and writes the following: Operation Web, which cost Russia several dozen strategic missile carriers, became a major victory for Ukraine. United States President Donald Trump is extremely dissatisfied with this Strikes by Ukrainian drones deep inside Russia dealt a humiliating blow to Moscow. The defenders of Kyiv called the attack a triumph of modern warfare and a warning to Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, the White House reacted to the extraordinary operation with anger. Next, there is a reference to a statement by insiders in the White House, who reported Donald Trump's disappointment because the Ukrainian operation could escalate the conflict. These sources reported that the drone strike could have reignited President Trump's long-standing dissatisfaction with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and sparked new debates in the White House about whether the United States should leave Ukraine. One of the United States president's advisors said that throughout the entire war, Trump considered Zelensky a bad guy and a hothead, someone who is pushing the world toward World War III. Quote, "This week, Trump privately repeated a right-wing talking point, criticizing Zelensky for allegedly putting on a show after the drone attacks." According to the advisor, Trump was struck by the audacity of the strikes, but believes that Zelensky should have focused on negotiations between Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul. According to the authors of The Atlantic, an irritated Trump is considering distancing himself from the Russia-Ukraine war. This is likely indicated by the fact that in yesterday's conversation with Putin, Trump tried to change the subject and focus on the issue of Iran's nuclear program. And Trump, is a coward, just a huge coward who took on, obligations. He shouted that he'd end the war and now he blames everyone except dictator Putin. In his opinion, we should just go to Istanbul, have absolutely meaningless negotiations where the Russians will bring ultimatums and not fight at all against the fact that Russia is striking Ukrainian territory. But fortunately, there are some sober, adequate people on Trump's team, and Kit Kellogg is Trump's special envoy on Ukraine. He first commented on the operation saying that it was an escalation, that it wasn't necessary. But today he changed his position and said that bold leadership and daring operations can change the nature of the battlefield. So he commented again on the strike against strategic aviation carried out by the Security Service of Ukraine on June 1st, although before that he had stated that this moment increased the risk of escalation. But moving on, today Kit Kellogg writes that this event could serve as a function of forcing peace, but both sides must remain committed to President Trump's mission to stop the killing and put an end to the war. So you see, this is, by the way, a very alarming signal for American society. Kit Kellogg, listen to this quote again. He tries to express his opinion, but immediately, almost in the same breath, he adds, "Here it is, hooray, patriotism." As the party leader said, that's what I'll say. You have to be committed to President Donald Trump's mission, and so on and so on. And that's scary. It scares me when the American establishment starts using these phrases. It's really frightening. It's a cult of personality. Let me quote for you again the words of Kit Kellogg. Listen. This event, that is the Security Service of Ukraine attack on Russian airfields, could serve as a function of coercion to peace. But both sides must remain committed to President Trump's mission, to stop the killing and put an end to the war. But what does President Trump's mission have to do with this is absolutely unclear. But somehow they seem to be cutting off their own. And I remind you that on the night of June 6th, another such massive strike was carried out on Russian territory. And now a full report has already appeared about what happened. The report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine states that the Ukrainian Defense Forces carried out a preemptive strike. On the eve of a massive enemy shelling, airfields used by enemy aviation and other important military facilities were hit. On the night of June 6th, a successful strike hit the Engels airfield in Saratov region. This is a location where enemy aircraft are concentrated, which remained after the operation by the Security Service of Ukraine. The Diaghilevo airfield in Ryazan region was also hit, where aerial refuelers and escort fighters are based, which are used to support missile strikes on the territory of Ukraine. In addition, enemy strategic bombers take off from Diaghilevo. Enemy air defense activity was observed in the Ryazan region. A fire was reported in the target area and details are being confirmed per the report. At the same time, in the Saratov region, multiple hits have been confirmed on at least 3 fuel and lubricant storage tanks, followed by ignition and a large-scale fire at the facility. Ukrainian forces also struck several key enemy facilities in Russia and temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories. In particular, a logistics point of the 30th Motorized Rifle Regiment of the 72nd Motorized Rifle Division of the Russian Army was hit in the area of the settlement of Kulbaki, Kursk region. We will conclude this broadcast with the news from the Kursk region. The fact is that on Saturday, June 7th, the Ukrainian Air Force carried out a successful operation in the Kursk direction, as a result of which a Russian Su-35 fighter jet was shot down. And now I will show you a video of this plane burning out. The only thing I want to clarify is that today many Telegram channels wrote that supposedly the Russian Su-35 shot down a Ukrainian F-16. Unfortunately or fortunately, this is not true. The Russian Su-35 did not shoot down an F-16. There is verified information that this aircraft, which took off from the Borysoglebsk airfield, was actually destroyed by anti-aircraft missile system fire. Yes, our anti-aircraft missile system struck the Su-35 aircraft in the Kursk region. This is not an F-16, despite many people incorrectly claiming it is. It's important to clarify this misconception. Well, and now, in particular, here's the video of that very aircraft being hit. Before you watch it, I want to say thank you to everyone. Leave your comments, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to hit the like button.